Mother leaves her baby with the dog for a few seconds but turns back to see something she never expected. The mother was frozen and stunned. Despite only having the dog for a few days, she was sure he had a gentle nature and would not do any harm to her family. Yet here he was, maltreating her child. She had only had her back turned for a few seconds. She was beyond ready to retaliate until she noticed something that made her think twice. All of this began when Miranda and Tim had their daughter, Sarah. After a few months of being a family of 3, they decided to expand it further. But, instead of another baby, they thought it would be good for Sarah to have a furry brother or sister. This would certainly give her a loyal companion. But they didn't want just any dog. The couple thought of buying a puppy from a breeder so they could get a dog with the exact characteristics they needed for their family. But they also wanted to give a loving home to a dog who didn't have one. As fate would have it, they soon learned of a rescue dog who had originally come from a breeder. The only problem was that this breed had a reputation for being aggressive and unpredictable. The dog in question was an adult male Doberman Pinscher. Dogs of this breed were initially bred as personal protection animals, so they are genetically predisposed to show ferocity and aggression. Their reputation certainly mirrors those traits. Even though modern breeders have bred them to be more gentle and friendly, it certainly doesn't help that most Dobermans are used as guard or police dogs. But there was something special about the dog Miranda encountered. This Doberman had been bred in the boarding kennels of Australia. He had been sold to a customer, but it was later discovered that he was being mistreated, so he was rescued from there. His condition was dire as he was starved and even had broken ribs, which indicated he had been beaten. It was so bad that vets pondered the possibility of putting him down. But then Miranda came into the picture. Miranda's husband, Tim, had some reservations. He was unsure whether they had chosen the right dog for the family. And had they really thought everything through? He didn't want the excitement of getting a new family member to cloud their judgment. But his reservations were quickly swept away as he got caught up in the excitement that they were getting a dog. Even after learning of his turbulent past, Miranda couldn't help falling in love with this dog once she met him. He had a personality that made her feel at ease, and so despite the warnings, she adopted him and named him Brutus. She couldn't wait to bring him home to meet her 17-month-old daughter. But that didn't mean she was going to be reckless with a strange new dog in her house. She had to take every precaution. For the first few days that Brutus was in Miranda's home, neither she nor her husband took their eyes off him. Baby Sarah was mesmerized by her new furry brother, and he seemed to behave pretty well around her. Miranda thought that she had made the right decision, although she remained careful when the dog and the baby interacted. One day, her entire perspective changed. Days after bringing Brutus home, Miranda took Sarah out in the yard and let the two of them play together while she washed the dishes. As if sensing that something was amiss, she glanced out the kitchen doorway and was met with a sight she'd never forget. But before she could make a move to stop it, it was already too late. Brutus kept nudging Sarah and pushing her with his muzzle, something Miranda had never seen him do. He was pushing the baby around as if he was trying to get her to react. Sarah was oblivious and continued to toddle around. Then he clamped onto her diaper with his teeth. Miranda bellowed Brutus's name as she watched in fear. Her mind raced at several million miles a minute. She had heard of dogs just snapping, but could this have happened to Brutus? Miranda couldn't help but feel like it was all her fault and that she should have been paying more attention. Had they been so overwhelmed with the excitement of getting a new pet that they had refused to see what kind of dog he actually was? Then Brutus did something that almost made Miranda's heart jump out of her chest. Brutus grabbed Sarah by her diaper and tossed her about 3 feet across the yard like she was a rag doll. Miranda could not believe what she was seeing, and for a moment, she froze in place, not knowing what to do. She had one thing on her mind and one thing only: she had to see if Sarah was okay. Miranda ran to her daughter and picked her up in haste. She checked her all over until she was satisfied that she was unscathed. She was surprised to see that there wasn't a single scratch on the child. When she turned her attention to Brutus, she half expected him to pounce on her as well. But instead, the dog did something strange. Brutus was struggling to stand on his feet, panting heavily and salivating. He lifted his front paw as if in pain, then his breathing grew labored, and he collapsed. Brutus was deteriorating right in front of Miranda's eyes. Something else was clearly going on here, but Miranda couldn't understand what had happened. Then she saw it. A brown king snake lay coiled in the grass. This is one of the most unsafe snakes to children in Australia. While these snakes are not usually aggressive, this one had a protective con to contend with. Brutus had flung Sarah away from harm and had sacrificed himself, but would he pay the ultimate price? Miranda realized that Brutus must have been bitten in the process of protecting Sarah. Miranda was now well aware that it was a race against the clock now. Brutus had to be rushed to the vet in order to get the antidote. With as much strength as she could muster, Miranda picked up the injured dog and somehow got him in the front seat of the car. Driving as fast as she could, Miranda made it to the vet, who rushed Brutus in and treated him. Thankfully, Brutus made it through the night. Whatever the reason, Miranda was extremely grateful.